Here we go. Okay. Oh, that was slipping away. All right. So the fourth video in this webinar series is looking at how we can desensitize students to the exam. Now, one of the things we have to keep in mind is that when we're thinking about anxiety, it's going to greatly affect our memory because, like I said, it's a natural instinct for us. We are going to go into fight or flight response, and with that, that's going to affect our cognitive ability to think. So we need to make sure that we manage this essential panic attack so that way students can still do well in their exams. So the way we do that is by desensitizing them to the exam to realize that this is actually not a threat and this is okay and I'm safe and things like that. So we want to mimic the exam conditions as much as possible. You only want to introduce this factor once students are feeling relatively confident about the material, and now we're just at a point to kind of do a CPR test in a more formal setting. So I did this all the time when I was in high school and university. I would go to a library, public library was fine, or school library. I would also even go to empty lecture halls and sit with my printout of past exams, and I would actually set a timer for 3 hours and sit and do a whole exam in that time frame just to get my mind and body used to that level of stress. So I suggest the same thing for students. Most students take their exams in the hall. It's probably unlikely they'll be in a situation where you can get the hall for them to do that, but even if just in a classroom setting, or in the library, that would work perfectly fine. And they just need to set a timer for the time frame allowed. Many of my students take either 1 or 2 exams. So what I tell them is set the exam timer for 3 minutes. If you're doing 1 exam, then you have 3 hours to do that 1 exam. If you're doing 2 exams, then you have 3 hours to do those 2 exams. You don't need to stay for obviously the full 3 hours, but at least stay for the first 45 minutes kind of thing or work for 45 minutes because that is what it's going to feel like on the day of the exam. You have to stay for at least the first 45 minutes. So that is the first kind of thing you can do just to get used to that time pressure as well. And that will ease a lot of anxiety when they have felt that time pressure. It's up to the student if they want to CPR the rest of that exam or if they just want to hand it in to a teacher to give them feedback. So one of the things that we have to be mindful of as educators is we do need to encourage our students to do past exams, and we do need to mark them for them so that way they can get the best kind of feel for where they are at. I used to tutor, and I would always offer to mark my students' work. And in fact, I said to them, look, there's no point in us having a tutoring session and you doing a practice exam question and I'm just sitting here for 20 minutes while I wait for you to answer this question. Do this on your own time, scan it, email it to me, I will mark it, and I'll give you feedback and we can talk about it in our tutoring session about what can be done better. The other thing to keep in mind to help desensitize students when it comes to the exam is color coding. That was really important for me at university. I still vaguely remember my immunology papers and how I color coded like the B cells as blue. And so that was like blue highlighter, blue pens, blue gel pens, the whole whole shebang. And that way I could remember that if I was thinking about B cells, I'm thinking about all the information I learned that was in blue. If I was thinking about T cells, then I looked for things that in my mind that were green. I remember my immunology notes were really complex, and it looked like a unicorn barfed a rainbow on them is what I described them. And I'm very sad that I didn't keep them because they're actually a really good example of study notes. But that's something that can be really helpful to help students visualize their notes or to kind of recall information because that makes it distinctive. The other thing that you can do as well, depending on how strict they are, is chewing gum or having a lolly of a certain flavor while you are studying because it helps your brain make those associations and organize your information. So like, for example, I would have like bubblegum flavored bubblegum, I'd have peppermint flavored bubblegum, I'd have cinnamon flavored bubblegum, and I would chew that specific bubblegum when studying for a certain topic or a certain subject, because that way I associated that flavor with that information. It was really, really random. It's basically Pavlovic dogging myself so that way I could recall information. But I know we're dealing with high school students. They may not be allowed to bring in chewing gum or lollies, but it's just something to help them settle is what I would suggest. When they come and sit down for the exam, the other thing to keep in mind, I wonder if I can make this bigger now. Or am I stuck with the size? Oh, I can make it a little bit bigger. Focus on me now. So the other thing that we can keep in mind when we are thinking about how to help with the fight or flight response during an assessment is we can also think about prioritizing how we answer the question. What I suggest to students whenever they start the exam to help, again, prevent a panic attack is read the whole exam first, find the easiest question, the one you feel the most confident with, and start with that one. It's basically the opposite of what you would do if you were studying. Pick what's most confident so that way you can get the ball rolling. And this is something that has been an aggravating factor for me when I'm looking at exams and giving exam feedback, is that often the first question can make or break the exam for a student, especially a student at a high equity index school. Because if they open up the booklet and they see a very terrible question one, nope, void, done. And that's where their mind stops. So it's really important, I think, as educators, if we're designing these exams, to actually put the easiest one first, just to help convince kids to get it going. So I always tell my students, look through the whole exam, find the easiest question, and start. You don't have to necessarily do part A first. You can start with part B, whichever. You're just trying to maximize what you're going to get out of that time frame. And that's the other thing. If you're in a short amount of time to get something done, well, you want to answer your strongest questions first. So that's the first thing that I suggest. The second thing I often suggest is before you start answering the question, start outlining it first. So they often give you scrap pieces of paper on the exam. Go ahead and write out what you need to do to organize your answer, because that organization of how you answer is basically the key for a lot of the excellence points. And in particular with subjects like biology, where it's very easy to ramble and ramble and ramble, that can hurt you as well. So do take the time to look at the bullet points provided, look at what you know about the information already, and try to organize your answer before you even start writing. As an exam marker, I very much appreciate that, because it's very easy then for me to know whether or not the student knows what they are talking about. So those are some ideas on how we can desensitize, or how students can desensitize the exam for them. And now I'm going to move on to the last part of my series, which is going to be about how we can design internals to make it more student-friendly. Sorry, it's going to take a while for it to load so I can stop this. Let's try another one. I can see my to-do list. What is going on? Fortunately, I didn't pay for the Pro, so now it's not gonna. Maybe exit Control